revision class for the Strategic Business Leader course. So good morning. It will be nice to also get someone tell me good morning now. Good morning as well.
Good morning, Jojo.
All right, good morning. Yeah. So it's been a very long ride. We've been having this since I think January 16. Yeah, 16.
17.
Okay, was this 17? All right, okay, yeah. We've been having this class in January 17. So I think it's just been an awesome ride. Let me also start by saying that this is not our final class. We're going to have another class again on Tuesday. And that class will be on Tuesday evening by 7 to 9. So basically what we are going to be doing, we're going to be reviewing the mock exams. I'll be sharing my thoughts on what I saw from the responses I got in the mock exams. More importantly, what were some of the key learnings and what you should be doing, in a similar circumstance in your exam. So it's just going to complement the session we're going to have today. So I just want to put that out there. So we're still going to meet on Tuesday by 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. West African time. I also recognize that we have some external people joining us. That's one of our commitments as a school. We also want to support the general progression of students across the country. So we decided to make this weekend as well to also free for everyone, especially because this is our final revision class. So there are quite a lot of things we think that we might share today that could be helpful, not just to our students, but also to the entire ecosystem. I mean, everyone who's going to be writing their SBL exam. So for starters, this exam is going to be, I think you guys have 9 days. I think that's how to put it. Some might say 9, some might say 8, because the 9th day really is the Tuesday you're writing your exam. So you're writing your exams next week, Tuesday, not this Tuesday, but the penultimate Tuesday. And so I was thinking of the way I would approach the final class. So I said, you know what, let me just come and tell you all that you need to know that will complement everything you've been doing. I pretty much know for those of us in Ivy League, we've been looking at questions every Sunday. I've been encouraging you all to look at questions. Even from the feedback I get, I see when people submit as well too, I see progression. So there are quite a couple of people who have noted, who've been making submissions every week. I see progression in terms of when they started out, how they're making their points and developing their points. So one of the things I always say is that, you're never going to find the same exam like verbatim, like word for word, but the concept will never change, right? So what you need to essentially do well would never change. And that's really what I'm going to be doing with you all today, just highlighting to you all you need to do so that next week, Tuesday, whether you're going to be writing it in the morning session or in the afternoon session, but that you're going to pass your exam, ace your exam. I have a couple of people tell me privately, Jojo, I just want to get 50, but I know that there are some people who want to do very well. And we also have a testimony, a history of people doing very well. There's someone, it's just that we have time difference. She's in Canada. So in our last diet, which was in December, she was actually the best student in SBL, but so she was the best student for everyone who wrote in Canada. Her name is Oma. I've invited her to come, but I know it's the time zones, and I know she did. It's something that I have to be very sensitive to as well too. But I'm hoping, because there's time zone issue, there's church for her as well too. I'm hoping that she can come. I've left her a couple again. I do hope that she's going to join us. She did brilliantly so well. In fact, she just shared with me the certificate. Who is that? Someone check your mic, please. I think that's Oluwakemi. Please just go off mute. Oluwakemi, just stay off mute. You don't need to put on your own. Just stay off mute.
I'm working on it.
All right. So I invited her. She's also going to come. I recall during our time, I didn't even know, until after exams that she was not based in Nigeria, but she was always participating in classes, like from the beginning to the end. So she's going to jump. I really, I'm hoping, I'm still going to remind her when we take a break to come in and just share her thoughts on what she did. But I can tell you for free that she was very active. Okay, so who is speaking to you? By the way, my camera is on. I don't know if you can put a face to my name, but if you can't see me for some reason, this is me. My name is Jonathan Ikeolumba, but I am fondly called Jojo. A bit about me, I'm into strategy and finance. I'm currently a doctoral student at the business school here in Lagos, working on a doctorate program. My focus really is on sustainability. That's really what I like because it covers a lot of lens from finance to core strategy, across, you're just looking at sustainability around businesses. So I currently lead in the school. I lead two papers, strategic business leader and APM. And I've been doing this for like 10 years, right? So I'm always happy. And I also facilitate these two papers, not just here, but also I do that also across Africa as well. Yeah, so I think I might have a couple of things that can be very helpful to making sure you all pass your exams. So I wanted to use the first 15 minutes for just introduction. And then when we are done, which I think it's fine to say we've done the introduction, we're going to go through a review of the syllabus. I hope to do that up to 11, then we take a break. And then when we come back, we now get into success techniques. What should you be doing? I'm going to also get our guests, the students who did very well, the best students in Canada, to speak to us for a couple of minutes, and then concluding thoughts. Please just put it at the back of your mind again that we are going to meet on Tuesday by 7 p.m. so that we review a particular exam question, that question, and I have my reasons for choosing a question. That question is called NCP. So we're going to continue on Tuesday by 7 p.m. So what do I have to share with you today? Overview of the exam, overview of the paper, the core things you need to do well in the paper. And I call it 3 skills, right? So if there's someone here, you might need to take a pen and a paper. Just note that there are 3 things you need to do very well in this particular paper. One is to be very strong on your technical skills. And I'm really going to zero in on that very soon. What are the technical requirements? What is the technical knowledge components? A very complementary skill, which is what I really tend to focus on right now at this stage, is the development of your professional skills. Very important. I'm going to be telling you what you should be doing. And the big picture is that I always say this, and I'll put it in context in an SBL class. So I always say that your professional skills are free marks because they are not related to a technical point. So it's not, so for example, evaluate a strategy. So maybe you want to use SFA model. It is not a mark related to how well you've evaluated that strategy. So for example, did you look at if the strategy was suitable for the organization, given where they are and given what their long-term goals are, or how feasible in terms of market feasibility, financial feasibility, and things like that. It is about professional communication. It is about professional understanding. It is about ensuring that you are I think the word is communication, because across all the 5 professional skills, communication is tested in all. And the simple way to know that communication is tested across all 5 professional skills is that you're going to use a communication format. So whether it's a letter, it's a memo, it's a PowerPoint slide, it's a briefing note, it's a draft press release, at the end of the day, you're going to use a communication format, right? So ultimately, it's about professional communication, professional understanding, right? And that speaks to the core essence of this paper. This paper was rebranded. It used to be, so I didn't do SBL. I always say this, right? So in my time, I did a paper called Business Analysis. It was called P3 then, Business Analysis. Also another paper fundamental to this paper is, so in my time, it was called P1, also called Governance, Risk, and Ethics. In fact, that was the second name. Before then, it used to be called Professional Accountant, right? So just really around professionalism, right? It's an issue that is dear to ACCA, that there will be a clear distinction with the way uh, uh, the world views their own certified accountants, and and somewhat what makes you distinct from other certified accountants via other programs as well. So there are 5 of them. I'm going to be speaking about it, and I'll give you simple tips or words you can use in your exam that can just help you reflect them a lot. I really like them, and I really like when I see candidates zeroing on that. So it is free if you ask me, because it's not related to technical points, and it is 20% of the exam. So that really means that if you have a very strong understanding on how to apply your professional skills, you might be looking for something like around 30 to 40, if you get what I mean, 30 to 40 marks in terms of your technical input, because you would have covered a lot of ground on your professional skills. So when people say to me, Jojo, I just want to pass, I just want to get 50, um, one of the things I'm really trying to be sure that they can demonstrate is the professional skills. And I used to do something when we were having our face-to-face classes then. I would always spend some time, after a class. So maybe when we are done, I would just ask, so what do you do at work? What do you do at work? And especially when there's someone who still feels like still battling with getting some fundamental understanding on the paper. So I always watch out for their or ask for their work experience. And I will be very confident to say, if you've operated at a certain level in the organization, and when I mean operating at a certain level, so maybe you are part of decision making in the organization, or you've had a long stay in terms of professional communication at work, I always say, that just think about your exam script, your exam questions, like a movie script where you are supposed to play out the script. So I do say that a lot to people who I know have very huge work experience, that if you think about some of the things you faced at work and how you overcame them, think of your exam like that, right? And I always am very confident that those sort of people with a lot of experience at work, do always turn out very good in their SBL exam. And the simple reason for that is because of the professionalism aspect of this course, 20 marks for professional skills. So if you've the longer, in my mind, in my view, the longer you've actually spent time working in a professional environment, I think you can find it very easy to apply that experience in how you respond to questions in SBL. So if I'm speaking to somebody who's had very good work experience, I'm saying to you, rely on that experience in terms of how you interpret the questions. It will come in good and very handy for you. And I've literally seen, people like that. I literally have had someone who I did like a 2-day private class for. The exam was on a Tuesday, and we just had the private class Saturday, Sunday, Monday, who had no idea around this paper, and he passed, right? And I told him, leverage of your work experience and just interpret the questions that way. The alternative, which is now speaking to someone who feels, oh, I've had a copper in my class. In fact, I've even had someone who was in Unilag in the final year, right, in accounting, also studying ACCA. And I did say to the person, make sure you've completed your ethics and professional skills module. And the person actually had done that, and she came out very, very good. In fact, she actually wrote 4 papers that diet, and she passed all 4. So there's something in it for you in terms of how to overcome your fears. And what is in it is, if you take advantage of the professional skills, that is 20% of the exam, I think that you'll be fine. So that for me is something that I think you should. So if someone here is wondering, I'm not too confident, Jojo is here saying to you, you can do it, because 20% of this exam will be focused on professional skills, which is nothing technical. It's just around professional communication, structuring your points in a professional way. And I'll be giving you quite a lot of pointers, keywords that you can think of in your exam. So yes, you can do it. And if you are that kind of person, I'm saying to you that yes, you can do it, and you will do it. Um, The final part is exam success skills, and that's really around three things, right? So one is time management, right? Very important. SBL is a 4 hours exam, so you've got to be able to realize that you are going to be restricted to 4 hours. So from minute 1 to minute 240, which is 4 hours, you've got to make sure that you have a strategy to manage time. The other exam skill I'll be speaking about too is the number of points you make. Very important. There's a temptation to keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. So interestingly, I have a student, a past student called, what's his name? Maurice, right? I have brought him to a couple of classes in the past before. So Maurice had 90, he was the best in Nigeria then in his SBL exam. And he said to me he actually finished writing. And that was the last paper-based exam. Yeah, it was September 2020. Okay, that was penultimate, second to the last paper-based exam. So he told me that he finished with about 15 to 20 minutes to go, right? So that's another exam success skill. And then the third exam success skill is make sure that you've done a couple of mock exams. So, but I'll speak on that in a little bit. So, if you are fine with these three, I can assure you from my experience that you do well in your exam and that you pass ultimately. So there's always a syllabus change every September. Like, so there'll be a syllabus change by this diet is the final diet for this syllabus. So those who will be writing in September, there'll be a new syllabus. And I always like to highlight what those additions are. Just so that if you also wanted to play with a strategy of, okay, what do I need to zero in on now? I might say to you, okay, have you covered the new additions in addition to what you know? So if you're just looking at topics you want to prioritize, so I always say prioritize the new additions. So for example, those who will be writing in September, blockchain has been removed from the syllabus. I think I did share it in a class when I was taking blockchain, the class we had on digital innovation. So blockchain has been removed from the syllabus, cryptocurrencies, initial coin offerings, those things are no more in the syllabus. So if I was to say to someone, do you want to pay attention to something? I might say, okay, look at those things that I think might be leaving the syllabus. Maybe the examiner might want to sign off with those things in this syllabus. But I'm going to share with you something I always do. I call it 16 key topics to watch out for, just so that if you think you are struggling with time, I might just say prioritize this, right? But for me, the real strategy is those three things I've shared with you, which is a strategy where you've covered everything. So we look at that. Then by the time we are done for break, all those examiners approach, and then I'll take Q&A, right? If it's possible and we have a lot of time, I would discuss the September-December 2021 exam. I was just looking at that this morning, but because I knew we won't have a lot of time, because only just going through the case might take us about 2 hours. So I was like, I would bring it up. If we want us to look at it, we can still look at it, depending on how well we manage our time. So yeah, so that's it about how you look at SBO. I'm going to give you room to ask me questions much later, but I think because we do not have enough time, let's just quickly jump in and just get straight into the overview. So are we fine? I mean, are we good? Are we good? I just want to get a voice response. Are we good? Are we fine?
Yes, that's all right, Jojo.
All right, fantastic. So back to the core technical areas. In fact, this is SBL for you, right? So SBL is a combination of both your professional knowledge and technical knowledge. What are you supposed to know? The following 8 are the technical areas. Well, you can say 9. I'll tell you what the 9th one is, but let me focus on the 8th first. Leadership, very strong. I always start, and that's how we start at Ivy League, where we start with leadership, right? The core of leadership, because ultimately, the big picture is you will be a strategic business leader from the time you get into your exam hall and even beyond your exam. So ACC always makes this point to us whenever we have our tutor conferences, that the idea around SBL is beyond the exam. Now, the exam is just the first test, right? It's beyond the exam. And that after the exam, you're still expected to continue to demonstrate all these attributes. So we always start by speaking on leadership, attributes of leadership, types of leadership, and what our preferred view as a course, as ACCA, the preferred approach to leadership. Because some of the questions you would find in your case study, at the heart of a lot of the successes of those organizations or the failures of those organizations is strong leadership qualities, to be honest. And we will speak about some of those leadership qualities. Then we always move a step after that to now speak on governance. Very important, right? Speaking on governance, because it is one thing to have a strategic business leader, or maybe even a couple of strategic business leaders if everyone has gone through this program in your organization. But organizations themselves are run through a structured approach or like a system. So governance refers to the way in which organizations are run, directed. And because we know that for organizations, the leadership, especially at the highest level, are responsible for the governance of the organization. So it is important that for strategic business leaders, you understand personal leadership traits, but at the level of steering the organization, providing good leadership for the organization is the role of governance, corporate governance, sound governance, right? And I want to be clear that successful organizations are organizations, and we did a model in the class. If you remember when we did the Badridge assessment criteria, successful organizations are organizations with sound governance in place. So from you as a person with good leadership traits, you then move it to how a couple of leaders then come in and set, strong governance in place. I'm so passionate about this area because, like I told you, I'm working on sustainability for my doctorate program, and a strong essential part of governance is sustainability. And it links into a couple of innovations that we're seeing out there from a finance perspective in terms of how we report on sustainability. So we'll cover sustainability reporting. We would also cover integrated reporting and examiner's favorites. Um, Questions around integrated thinking have been tested in the past. The 6 capitals, which is really rethinking how we look at capital in the business, not just financial capital, but other aspects of capital like social capital, or what you might call relationship capital, manufactured capital, what are the other ones? Intellectual capital, human capital, natural capital, So all that, are also strong parts. So sustainability, I'm going to speak on this. I'm so passionate about this, is a strong focal area here. Then we now get into the heart of the paper, which is strategy. Strategy is 25% of the course. So obviously it's called strategic business leader. And for me, and the way I want you to look at it, class, is that strategy or being strategic really means thinking long term, right? The word strategy in itself refers to the course, the plan of action to achieve your objective. But when we say be strategic, is be broad-minded, be long-term focused, right? And there are several aspects. This is the heart of the course, right? There are several aspects of strategy that has been, brought in this course, and you should be comfortable. You will find that for a lot of the questions in SBL, you might want to use a model. And it's important that you understand strategy so that you can know the right strategic model to use. So there are a couple of things we'll look at under strategy. The external environment, right? The internal environment, the external environment. So just a second. Um, so just a second. I feel like I need to get something. Hello, can you hear me? Apologies. I felt like someone was at the door. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. So there are a couple of models in strategy, and I will highlight them. I think this is a very strong part of the course. Then we cover risk management, and risk is ever evolving. I mean, the concept of risk is very dynamic, and as the external environment and the business environment in itself becomes very fluid, like we're seeing it, right? There's all sort of interactions we're seeing. Even the concept of what is core to a business and a lot of the way businesses do operate now. The complexities we are seeing out there also has its impact on the sort of risk that are evolving now. So some of the core risk organizations pay attention to now as also is also slightly getting broader, right? So there's a lot around cyber risk now, technology related risk, even risk around employees. You're finding that even the way we see employees now in terms of how employees want to work, there's all sort of that kind of conversations on from a risk perspective. I also know that this is an area that where the syllabus has also been updated for this year. So when I was talking of new additions, part of the new additions here is under risk. And there's something that is important that the examiner, that the SBL team added, which is around the 4 layers of risk, right? So we're going to speak about that very soon. Then organizational control, it's also an important one. And what is organizational control? I've actually had someone ask me this in a class. Simply is internal controls in organizations, right? That's what we mean, right? The internal controls in your organization is what we mean by the organizational control. So why is internal control important? I can tell you that this is one of those applied areas in the course. So you will find that you might be asked questions. And we did a couple. I think when we looked at, what's that question we looked at? I think that was co-fold construction, if you remember, where one of the parts of the question was asking that we identify control lapses, right? So you might find those sort of, I mean, this is a very applied area in the course, identifying gaps in their internal controls. And I can tell you for free that you're not going to just have questions where you might be asked to identify the lapses in internal control, but you would also be asked to also make recommendations as well too. So I foresee a lot of the questions around that. The other part of the course is organizational audit, which is also internal audit, so not external audit. I like to be very clear when I explain this to SBL students. So we don't cover external audit, right? You might cover that in AAA, right? But in SBL, we only cover internal audits. So some of the topics might be the role of in the internal audit function, also how that relates to the audit committee. So you might see questions where you are asked to speak on the composition of the audit committee, how the internal audit head of the internal audit, or what you might call the chief internal auditor, relates with the audit committee, that sort of independence for the audit internal audit team. Sometimes as well too could be things that might highlight the importance of internal audit. I think there was a question we did in the class where we saw the question where it said that internal audit does a pre-scheduled visit, and I was saying to you that no, now that's a very big control lap. I also know that we sometimes we say internal audit is called a management control because it's the control that ensures that all internal controls are working. So sometimes we say internal audit is the control of controls, right? So every organization uses their internal audit function to really ensure that all internal controls are sound and effective. That's the mechanism that checks that the internal controls are also strong, right? So you might find very applied questions in that regard. What am I even saying very applied? All the questions are applied. Then we looked at finance, and that's a very important area of the syllabus. So you might find that you might be doing very simple analysis around financial and non-financial analysis. You will not find purely calculative questions. You will not find it. I can tell you for free, not at SBL level, right? You're going to find financial analysis questions that also requires integration of non-financials. So maybe it's a decision to acquire an organization, to acquire a target company in another country, they would give you a set of financials and obviously would ask you to evaluate whether that decision in itself will make sense, right? And you can use a couple of models to do that. Obviously, in doing the financial analysis, it could require you to do an MPV. So be very sure you're comfortable with those sort of calculations and MPV analysis. Sensitivity analysis, sometimes, you might be required to just looking at how sensitive some of the inputs in your analysis, can be to the overall decision you want to make. So I'll give an example. So let's say your MPV will give you something like $1 million, right? And obviously the rule is positive MPVs should get accepted. Any projects or any decision that will lead to a positive MPV should be accepted. So it might be that you might be told, that quite a couple of the variables. So maybe the sales revenue looks very, very variable, and you might be told something like, so how confident are we to make those decisions? You might want to ask yourself, okay, so what's the sensitivity of sales revenue to the overall MPV? If sales goes up by 20%, if we underestimate it by 20%, are we still going to have a positive MPV? So those sort of analysis, I've seen that in a couple of questions you might do. You might do simple ratios. You can do simple ratios, liquidity ratio analysis, profitability ratio analysis around riskiness, whether it's gearing, operational gearing, financial gearing. You might do this sort of analysis. Yeah, you could also, like that question was in, what's that question? Dorchico, September 2019. Look out for that question, Dorchico. In Dorchico, you were essentially going to, it's like a marginal analysis question. If you can remember your old elementary MA or PM, it was centered on marginal analysis, right? So you might need to just look out for that question. And I think that question was in 1A or 1B on marginal analysis. Dorchico, September 2019. You could also, under the area of finance, be asked to evaluate sources of finance, right? There has been questions in the past. If you look at specimen 3, it spoke about venture capital, right, as a source of financing. Should you go for debt? Should you go for equity? Should you go for a couple of other alternative sources of finance? I've seen suggestions by the examiner that says you can use cryptocurrencies to raise finance. I mean by issuing coins, cryptocurrency coins. That's what we mean by an ICO, a fresh issue of a cryptocurrency coin to raise finance. It's called an initial coin offering. And you can think of it as an alternative, especially what kind of firms can find it very attractive? Tech startups. So I'm going to show you, I have a page that shows you all the case studies in terms of all the organizations that have been tested. So expect to see a technology startup, and how do they raise funding? This can be an option for them. So I've seen a couple of those kind of questions on that finance, but the very common one is an MPV analysis. I've seen that a lot. Technology and data analytics is something that is very, very recurring, very recurring. Data analytics question has been tested in a specimen, it's been tested in a couple of past questions. The importance of data analytics. I think you all did 2 weeks ago, you did March 2020 case study. You've all done TT for you. Is that a correct assumption? I'm sure Afi covered that because we had that conversation. You covered TT for you,
Yeah.
where you looked at Internet of Things, right? So technology is a very strong area. A technology consulting company was tested in that diet. So if you are new or you're not with us in Ivy League, you might want to check March 2020 SBO and just see a couple of technology related questions. Innovation, performance excellence, and change management, another area I really love, is always a popular one in the exam. A core topic here that please watch out for is project management. Project management is another area the examiner likes, right? Understand the project life cycle, understand those very important documents that are required to effectively manage the project. So for example, the project initiation documents, a PID, A couple of questions have been tested in the past where you should understand the outline. What should be the components that you would find if you take up a project initiation document? There's also a business case document. In fact, interestingly, in my time when I was doing this equivalent of this paper, business analysis, we did business case. And there was a technical article that came before then. And the examiner was explaining why business case is so important and why they love to test it. They say because in preparing a business case for a project, when you want to present a business case for an organization to embark on a project, especially for projects that are very strategic, that would usually require a lot of huge financial outflow, you find that there will always be conversations with the finance team or with an accountant in preparing a business case, especially in highlighting the cost implications and what the financial benefits might be if the organization decides to invest in those projects. So please look out for project management. There have been lots of technical articles. A very recent one came out, I think in September of last year. If you don't have it, I can share it with you, but I know I've shared it in the past. Project planning, very, very essential. I don't joke with the examiners' technical articles. Please, especially the very recent ones, and I'll highlight some of the recent ones for you. Market segmentation was a recent addition, and it was tested in December 2021. That question that I said we might look at, it's called optimal leisure. Customer segmentation was tested. So market segmentation was one of the technical articles was listed. Badge assessment criteria was one of the new technical articles. It was tested last in September 2019. So it is not impossible that you will find it again in these diets. So look out for those 4 technical articles that were just recently released. I mean, last year, towards the tail end of last year. Project planning, Badge performance assessment, customer segmentation, and I think there was one on AI, machine learning, and robotics. Please read those technical articles. Read those technical articles. If you don't have them, I can share them with you. Very, very important. So performance excellence is covered by, you can use ratios to look at performance excellence, but Badge performance criteria is very important. Change management is always a very popular examiner's favorite. Somehow it could be subtly inserted, but you might not know it's change they're looking at. A new leadership is happening, how that will be managed. In fact, there was a question in March 2020. I think that's the same question with TT for you. And those of you who are quite fresh with TT for you in March 2020, correct me if I'm right or wrong. There was something around a turnaround plan that was supposed to be instituted by the new CEO, and how they were going to approach that turnaround situation. That was change management they were discussing. So it's a very common area. Innovation at several levels are tested in the syllabus. So there's product innovation, using innovative products. There's digital innovation, which is the role of disruptive technology. There is process innovation at the level of your processes, right? And you can link that to things around business process reengineering and things like that. There's also innovation at the level of your business model. So those are the 4 levels that you will find tested in SBL. Product innovation, process innovation, business model innovation, and then digital innovation. I think you'll be very fine with all of this. So the professional skills, I'll come back to it. I just want to conclude with the technical skills. I'll come back to it. So in giving you an overview on what we are going to be discussing today, I just wanted to give you quite very important things you should pay attention to. That this exam will be based on a real world situation. So let me be clear that your case studies are real examples, but the names they've used pseudonyms so that we protect the integrity and also the privacy of the organizations. So they're all real cases. All these things are real cases, that have been adapted to suit the SBL exam. So the idea is to really make you very strong, have a total 360-degree picture on what a business should be about. I'll come back to this, which is really some of the documents I want you to look at. I'll come back to it. But this is what I wanted to bring out: the structure of the exam. So it's a 4 hours exam. All the questions are compulsory, and I like this because in my time we used to have optional questions, and I think it can be distracting when you know you've got to choose 3 out of 4. But now all questions are compulsory, so it puts focus from minute one. All the questions are based on the same scenario. So there was a particular diet where the sub questions were as much as 10. So it's interesting. I think I remember I was saying that in class that all these 10 questions are still based on the same scenario. So it's not like 10 different questions where you have to read 10 different scenarios, right? So it's the same scenario. So even if the questions, just the same way, I've seen a question that the total sub questions were just 4 or 5. It doesn't matter. If the total sub questions, when I mean sub questions, let's say question 1A, question 1B, question 1C, question 1D, if the total sub questions are 20 or they are 4, the 100 marks is still the 100 marks. So it doesn't really matter. Another thing that I want to highlight, and this is very important, please, and that's why mock exams can be useful, is that you'll be reviewing quite a lot of information. And I always say it is deliberate. The average you've been doing is 12 pages. Let me also be very honest with my own review. The average number, sorry, I think, so I don't know how many of you. So I printed out, and I was just reading this question this morning. I printed out September, December 2021. Let me just see page what it comes to, just to tell you what I mean. Okay, awesome. Good. This is what I printed from the so I've got 21 pager. It is 21 page. It might be faint, you might not be able to see it. It says 21 page, but maybe that's because some of it is speaking to the instruction screen. If I take out the instruction screens, the instruction screen is 6. Yeah, so 21 minus 6 will give us 15. So December 2021 exam is a 15 pager exam. So I'm trying to say to you that you are going to cover a lot of information on your exam day. You're going to read a lot, and it is deliberate. And do you know what is deliberate about it? The examiner says he wants all candidates to be under pressure in reviewing information, because that is how strategic business leaders, that's the kind of conditions they work under. It is deliberate to make you go through 12 to 15 pages. They could have made it 3 page, right? But it is deliberate that you are put under that pressure. And the big picture is you will find that in life, you need to be able to extract what is important out of a mountain of very, very irrelevant things. So you are not blessed, even in real life, with a situation where you would have all the time in the world to do everything you wanted to do. You will always prioritize. You will always prioritize. That's the way life is. You're always going to prioritize. So to take it back to your SBL case study questions, you must learn the art of seeing what is important. And that's where those things around using a highlighter, right? Using the on-screen highlighter, when you see what is important, you highlight it. So apt. I also say to people that if you don't want to use the on-screen highlighter, you are allowed. You are allowed. And this has been validated by people who have come out from the exam hall, and they said to me, Jojo, I was allowed to take a pen of paper and a pen and a piece of paper, and I could scribble down my points. So that is perfectly fine if you wanted to use that strategy. So get the important points out. Get the important points out. And one of the things I do to help you with this is I shared with you a formula I use when I look at questions. I call that my RFMVAP formula, where I'll tell you in every question, what is your role? So when you look out for your role, you are looking out for that as well in the case study question. Every question will require that you present in a communication format. What format should you present in? Every question has a maximum available number of marks you can earn. Note it down. There are key verbs in a question. Oh God, I need to switch. I've taken like, and then also what audience role are you playing in the question? and then what is the professional skill. This is one strategy just to manage the question bit part of your exam. But in terms of the core case study question itself, I'm going to share with you some of the things you can do to be able to do well in your exam. So by and large, the following range of sources of information and data are possible in an SBL exam. Interview with staff, so you might see a staff interview. Results of a survey, you might find. Reports of the organization, whether it's an extract, whether it's a full report, you might find. Extract from the website, the vision statement on the website, the About Us page on the website. I've seen it in a couple of questions. Extract from the website, extract from their financials, extract from their integrated reports, emails, memos, spreadsheets. And if you've gone through a lot of past questions, you will agree with me that it's common to see those things. So how does a typical SBL exam question requirement, how does it, or what does it look like? So analyze the external environment. That's a popular one. Analyze the governance model. That's a popular one. If you looked at BCO, I think you've all done BCO. BCO is December 2020. Something about two-tier level to corporate governance was tested. Assess the position, evaluate the performance of an organization, very common. Consider the future outlook, identify strategic problems and opportunities, how to manage risk, how to make strategic choices. These are very, very possible exam questions, right? Please, just for someone who isn't used to our methodology, don't do verbatim, meaning copy and paste the case material. There is a detector on your computer screen, on the software used for writing your exams, that throws out verbatim. Please don't copy and paste a material. That's a lazy way to approach your SBL exam. Please, it is not the length of your points, it's the quality of the points you are making. Very, very important, right? Okay, so just give me a second. I need to switch power and I'll be back. So you can use like 2 minutes to just stretch a bit. We'll be back shortly. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jojo.
Yeah, fantastic. Cool. So these are the 8 technical areas in the course. And so I'm going to start with leadership. So they're all going to be applied in the way you will look at the questions, view the questions. What are the qualities of good leadership? I expect you all to be very comfortable with this area. So let me show this so that I don't make this class one way. I mean, you are the ones writing these exams. So let me do it in a manner that will get you thinking. What are some of the qualities? And I'll just be very selective in some of the points. What are some of the qualities? So let's assume that you are told that you're going to be recruited as the new CEO of a particular organization. What are some of the qualities? Okay, no, let me use the question that was tested in the past question. I think that was in specimen 2. You are sitting in a recruitment of a new CEO. What are some of the things you'll be looking out for? So let's say you have a chance to interview a CEO to come and turn around the functions of an organization. What are some of the qualities you'll be looking out for from that CEO? I think that looks very applied, and that was the past question. You know, what are some of the things you'll be looking out for?
Hello, Jojo.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so I'll look at if the person is a visionary. Does the person have a direction of where he or she is going?
Do you want to stop, or is that what you mean? Do you mean you would be happy if the person can demonstrate?
The ability to have a sense of direction.
Okay, to share that sort of, and that might be something you might want him to say. Okay, what's your thoughts on where the organization can be headed towards?
Yes.
Okay, so that's one. Do you want to give me another one?
If the person is somebody that has a interpersonal ability to influence other people.
Okay. Can someone else take it up from her? Ability to influence people, setting strategic vision for the organization. I want to hear from other people again, because these are the sort of, I'm trying to develop your mind so that when you see some of these scenarios in your exam, you're already thinking around what you can suggest, what you'll be looking at for, what you're going to be writing to the examiner. So let someone pick up from her. She's giving 2 very good points. I want to hear more. Let someone pick up from her. This exam is next week, Tuesday. Okay. If no one is going to pick up, we move on. We're going to
So
manage
if
that.
his values aligns, if his values aligns with that of the organization's value.
Okay. Yeah, so you also might want to do some bit of personal character assessment, especially to ensure that he has the right values, you know, and more importantly, like you said, that would align with the organization. Okay, that's fine. Let me also take it a step further to say, and I'll be taking this approach to be sure you understand the concept, because if you understand the concept, it becomes easy to apply. So what then do we think is the role that culture plays? What's the role of, okay, in 2 ways. I'll come to the second one. What's the importance of a leader or good leadership to sustaining the culture of an organization? I want to get that relationship. What's the relationship, or what's the role that of leadership in sustaining an organizational culture? Who is happy to try?
Hi, Jojo.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question again? Sorry, I didn't hear
What's
that.
the role? What's the role? How does good leadership help sustain the culture in the organization? Just show me the relationship between leadership and the culture of an organization. So what impact would a leadership have on the culture of an organization?
Okay, I would personally look into the power structure. If I would look at his personality, his styles, and his habit.
Okay.
And also I would actually look at the structure of the board. I don't know if that answers your question.
By the way, thank you for attempting, right? And you sort of touched on it. I just wanted someone to just show the relationship in a very holistic manner. But I mean, I like a couple of the things you said. That was fine. Is
Okay,
there someone?
so hello?
Yeah.
Yes, so with culture, I think the leadership sets the tone of the culture. So it's a certain thing where if you want the environment to be an open environment, is there like open door policy? How do you speak to people? How do you convey information? Do you have meetings, or is it by memos, like that type of thing? So in the sense that the leadership sets the tone at the top, so the organizational culture starts from the leadership of the organization.
Fantastic. I thought that was very brilliant. So thanks to you and the lady who spoke before you. So culture essentially is the way things are done, the way we do things literally. And let's be very clear that every organization actually has its own culture, right? But what influences that culture can be function of several things. And I like the fact that the last lady who spoke said that, the leader or the leadership really sets the tone for the culture. And sometimes, right, if you think of it, right, if you think of many of the big brands, the big firms, most valued firms, just think of them. If you think of the brand and then close your eyes for a second and think of the CEO or the leadership in those organizations, you literally can find that alignment. That the leader reflects, embodies, characterizes. So when you say that this is the culture of this X organization, it is characterized, it is represented, it is visualized, embodied by what you see in the leader. So I like that comment around the leader setting the tone, the leader being an embodiment of that. And I say this because in your exam, quite a lot of fundamental things that have shaped the success or the failure of an organization. Or when you look at a lot of the questions, and I always say watch out for this when we are looking at a question, especially in the introduction page. What's the history of the organization? Can you cite it? How old is the organization? What has been the practices over time? What have been the key milestones recorded in the organization? So I like that the first lady who spoke tried to speak about other aspects, because under culture, there's a fantastic model we call the cultural web that shows a couple of elements of culture in an organization, whether it's the power structure, which is what she was referring to, or whether it's the organizational structure. She also spoke about the organizational structure, or whether it's around the control systems. That's also some of the things that reflects the way the culture in an organization is. What sort of internal control systems do they have? What are their rights? Or what are the daily routines that happens in the organization? You find a couple of those things. What's the paradigm? What's the overall thinking? Sometimes there are useful stories that bet the reason or shape the success of an organization. There's a particular case study. Is the name of the case study just keep in my mind. I think that was I think that is specimen 3, NEBI. I don't know how many of you have looked at NEBI, the case study NEBI. they had a history of converting historic monumental sites and monumental locations, converting them to hotels, so that they're also preserving the history of those places. And it has astronomically changed and improved their perception, because they were also addressing issues around the history of the country, preserving those things. Are there symbols? Symbols are a good representer. So sometimes the CEO comes in and it feels like, look, our brand isn't really identifying with our target audience or our target market. I don't know how many of you have noticed this. A leadership can come in and feel, let's refreshing our brand. I don't like the colors. The colors are dull. Let's make the colors very, very bold. Or let's even change the logo completely. You know, a couple of these things do happen. And then what are the stories from the founders that the founders have always shared? You see some organizations, what led to the birth of that organization could have been a personal incident that the founder did experience. And it shapes the founder. It resonated with the founder, and the founder identified an opportunity. And then the founder is always passionate about relaying that story to everyone. When he speaks to the growth of the organization, he's happy to share that story. So these are some of the things you look out for. All right, so let me move because of time. Governance is another popular area that can be tested in your exam. And I think I saw a lot of questions on governance in BCO. So you might want to check BCO. BCO was September, December 2020. The agency relationship. And I always say that the agency relationship isn't just about the popular ones you've known in earlier studies. Maybe those of you who did AA and still fresh in your mind, you could have covered agency relationship from the perspective of shareholder versus directors. But an agency relationship is a relationship where essentially one party is acting as an agent of the other party. What binds or defines an agency relationship is what we call a fiduciary duty. And what's a fiduciary duty? Literally, a duty of care, a duty of trust. When there's one party acting on behalf of another party based on the fact that that party owes its principal a duty to act in their best interest. And there are a couple of it you will find in every organization. So I've seen a question that says identify the various agency relationships. So I would say think of what happens between the director and the shareholders as a fantastic one. So I want to ask and hope somebody's going to give me the response. If I asked you, and I mean anyone in the class, what would you, or is there an agency relationship between the external auditors of an organization and the shareholders of that organization? Who is happy to tell me, explain to me, tell me if you think there is one, or if you think there isn't one, just with some justification. Who is happy to give me that response? Please, please, please. This exam is next week. I want you all speaking, please. Do you think an agency relationship exists between the external auditors and the directors in an organization?
Hi, Jojo. Yes, I think there's a fiduciary relationship in the external auditor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. In the external auditor acting on behalf of the shareholders place reliance on the reports provided by the external auditor. And I think there's a duty of care on the part of the external auditor in ensuring that the report is a true reflection of the financial statements, which they base their financial decisions on. And also the shareholder is trusting the external auditor to carry this duty professionally.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, and I agree with all the points you are making. And that's true. So I've seen a question like that, and the examiner did highlight that candidate failed to, when he asked, identify the various agency relationships within the scenario, and quite a couple of people failed to highlight that. So that's fantastic. I like that. Stakeholder analysis is also a very popular one I've seen, right? And you see it quite in a couple of questions from different perspectives. So maybe it is the question where you are being asked. So you know that model they call SFA that we use for evaluating strategies or evaluating strategic actions. How many of you can recall the model? So what does SFA mean?
Suitability.
All right.
Feasibility and then acceptability.
Okay, cool. So I've seen a couple of questions, and by the way, acceptability means that hope it is acceptable by the stakeholders, right? So whether it's shareholders, who is a major class of your stakeholders, or the other stakeholders we find, regulators, there are quite a lot of, even employees are stakeholders, suppliers, customers are also stakeholders, partners, they're all stakeholders. So there are two levels I've seen, or two perspectives rather, in the way questions on stakeholders can be tested in your SBL exam. One perspective is to do your Mendel's stakeholder mapping, which is to say those you keep satisfied, those you keep informed, those with, minimal efforts, and then the key players. Another one is to understand that for some decisions, it is important that stakeholders are properly aligned. That's also a fantastic one. So especially where you're evaluating, I've seen this in a couple of questions, and that's why I'm sharing that when you are doing a strategy evaluation and you're looking at acceptability, sometimes to score a lot of points under acceptability, it will be important that you analyze all the stakeholders in the scenario and to find out whether those stakeholders would find those decisions acceptable. There was a question, I think that was highlighted, where the labor union was a very strong union. And it was put in the question, right? So I think it was highlights that was trying to make an acquisition of a company. And the target company they were trying to acquire had, has their employees belonging to a very strong labor union. And there was stiff resistance. So I'm saying that stakeholder analysis is always tested in SBL from that two perspectives. One is the normal, how to manage your stakeholders using the Mendel's matrix. But sometimes it can just be simple things around identifying who are the stakeholders in the question. How do you approach and deal with the stakeholders? How do you take in each of these stakeholders, take their peculiarities into cognizance in making decisions? So I want you to think about that. That's a very good hallmark of a good strategic business leader, that you think of the impact on different stakeholders and manage them. Sometimes managing them can also mean that you hold, in project management, how do you manage project stakeholders? Let me even throw this one open to you, because these are applied scenarios in your exam, right? And I'm asking you those questions. How would you effectively manage project stakeholders as a project manager? Tell me some of the mechanisms you can use to manage your stakeholders in the project. I want to hear someone try. Just give me one response. Let one person just try. Please, let's interact. I'm not a teacher. I'm just facilitating. Let's share views. The exam is next week. Okay. If nobody speaks, we move on. That's what I'll be doing. Okay, so
Jojo, Gantt charts. I can use a Gantt charts.
So the Gantt charts just.
You said mechanism. I can also do workflow breakdown, as in process, or everything that they need to know about the project, the stages. So I can break it down.
Okay, what I would rather say is that communication, to be honest, right? You can, because if you understand this Mendel's matrix, right, where you basically group people into power and also their level of interest, right? Power meaning the power to influence decisions, and also interest around, how interested they are in the activities. You find that for project stakeholders, right, many of them, because it's an internal organization. A project is an internal organization, meaning that you create a project from something that will be happening for the organization. So most of the times, what they all have in common is their level of interest in the success of the project. So a very strong tool or mechanisms for communicating or for managing your project stakeholders are through your project status reports, right? And that's why I wanted to relate to what you were saying about your Gantt chart. So status updates, if you want to present them through the progress on what you have in a Gantt chart, that's fine. But I think project status reports are also a fantastic way, how you can, ensure that you're communicating with them, and that's happening. Okay. Governance scope. Yeah, thanks. Governance scope and approaches also a very important one, and it was tested also in that diet in BCO. Two core approaches to corporate governance, and from there you can begin to then sort of decipher which is best. There's a rule-based approach, there's a principle-based approach, right? Rule-based is prescriptive. Principle-based really, it's really subject in how you want to interpret it. And they both have their strengths and weaknesses. So you might want to find out which one is happening in an organization. You're not going to find a theoretic question. That's why I'm asking you, what would you do? So I'm forcing you all to think. Can you all decipher where there are corporate governance issues or where there are weaknesses in corporate governance? And if I wanted to make it very, very practical, so if I asked you to demonstrate to me now an instance that might show a corporate governance weakness. So for example, or a corporate governance weakness, dormancy of directors, or if you read through a scenario where you are told that the directors have not had constituted a proper quorum in their board of directors meeting for a whole year, I think that's a very big corporate governance issue, right? So always spot it out. Now, this is one of those topics that if you say corporate governance issue, it can fundamentally stretch to a lot of things, because that's the heart of how decisions and how an organization should be directed and controlled. So I'm saying that even where you don't find a very specific question that says list or identify the corporate governance issues, what I'm saying to you and everyone on the call is that anytime you spot a corporate governance issue or a corporate governance weakness, please note it. It can be fundamental to any of the questions you will find in the exam, because it is fundamental. If there are weaknesses with corporate governance, it's only a matter of time before it impacts the organization as a whole. Board committees are important, and depending on your exam question, you will most likely find out that you can have what I'll call an ad hoc board committee. What does an ad hoc board committee mean? That's just like a temporary committee. It can be set up for whatever reason. But what we'll be speaking on is standing board committees, your standard board committees, your permanent board committees. And for this particular course, think about the risk committee, think about the audit committee. I've seen a question where they mentioned HSE, health and safety, but that's not a standing committee, right? But it's one of those committees that can arise. But I also want you, what are the other committees? Let me find out whether you are ready for that. What are the other committees? I've listed audit committee, risk committee. What are the other standing? All right.
Remuneration and then nomination.
All right, cool. Fantastic. Now, what I always say is to know the characteristics, what are their core focus, right? And then the components across them. Stakeholder reporting to stakeholder has changed and has progressively evolved over time. From purely financial reporting to an inclusion of non-financial in your reporting, right? So there's sustainability reporting, which speaks to, so now you have people speak about ESG. Now, what that really means is that, the big picture really, the big picture is financial reporting would not give a full representation of the value creation process in a business. That's the big picture. And so it makes sense that the corporate reports from an organization tells the full picture on how an organization creates value. And so you would find that that speaks to also sustainability. So what you're essentially finding now is that the corporate reports are a mixture of financial and non-financial. And for non-financial, especially when we use a sustainability lens to look at it, is about three key things that are the heart of them, right? So we're looking at environmental impact, we're looking at social impact, and we're looking at governance, right? And so in addition with this, and you can see, in fact, there's a school of thought, like I said, this is my research area. There's a school of thought that says that your financial performance is actually an outcome, or it's a result. It's actually the result of the non-financial things you're doing in your organization, right? So, and especially when we look at sustainability and sustainable development, that speaks to the long term, right? Ensuring that businesses, really addresses long-term issues, and that, all those things around going concern, and that businesses are set up not just for the interim, but also to deliver long-term value. Those other important issues around environmental issues, social issues, and governance issues are fundamental, right, to looking at long-term sustainability and viability of a business. So some things that you might find a lot that speaks to sustainability, and from that lens, you have seen a lot of questions where they look at environmental sustainability. So things around environmental impact. So very common. In fact, let me force you to give me responses here, because I actually expect that you're going to find questions on sustainability in your exam, which I think we're looking at the question, and we're seeing some of the environmental indicators. Was that not also highlight where they were talking about things like CO2 emission, right? So tell me some of those things that you might want to find an organization reporting to, especially along the lines of environmental impact. Who wants to give me an example?
Hi,
Okay.
JJ.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
also look into the carbon footprint,
All right.
and
Yeah.
then pollution, how they pollute
Yeah.
the environment, and then recycling as well. So those are the things we need to look out for in our environment, like in a business environment, actually.
Okay. I have a strong conviction in my heart that you will find questions on sustainability in your exam. I want to do something. Even though people don't want to answer me today, but it's okay. Maybe people are reading, you're still on that reading hangover. But I think that you might find a couple of questions on this. And if you do, come back and tell me that yes, I got it right. Okay, so yes, issues around greenhouse emission, so you spoke about carbon footprint, you'll find those sort of things, waste management as well, to how the organization is managing waste. And I guess you spoke on that when you also were trying to talk on recycling. Also pollution, and pollution across several aspects, whether it's even things around. So I've seen a question where the organization tried to show their contribution to minimizing air pollution by speaking around how they now do audio meetings, web meetings, to minimize the travel time, right? So you might find things like that, right? So travel time, travel savings, you might want to speak on that. What about social issues? Who is happy to tell me some of the social issues that you might want to look out for? You might find this in your exam. So who wants to try? Social considerations.
Perhaps their
How we look at
relationship
social
with
impact.
their community.
Yeah, so things like CSR activities,
Hmm.
you might want to report on it. Yeah, community relationships as well too, right? That's fine. Especially sometimes for crime prevention, you might be involved in some community relationship projects. There are also very soft issues around racial discrimination as well too. So some organizations are very happy to put out especially in their recruitment, that we don't discriminate on the basis of race, on the basis of tribe, on the basis of even what's that thing? On the basis of physical attributes.
How about gender?
Yeah, even on the basis of gender, yeah, obviously. So anti-discrimination policies as well too, right? You might find a couple of those things as yeah. Please go on.
In
What of
addition
child
to
labor you?
Yeah, labor issues, right? Yeah, good. How you manage your labor unions, your labor issues. Yeah. Somebody was going to say something again.
Joe,
yeah,
please,
also we
see what
might
you
need to
say. Community what? Then what's the next one? I can't see it properly.
Okay, anti-discrimination. Forgive my writing. Like
First one,
that they
community.
don't discriminate on the basis of race, gender, tribe.
Then the
Even
first one,
sometimes
community what?
CSR, community relationship.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank
also
you. There's a
Jojo, we
lady
might
was
need
trying to speak.
to
Yeah.
yeah, we might need to actually look into the standard of living of the community, of the people around the community as well.
So that might speak to income class. Yeah. I mean, that's still fine. What about governance issues?
Yeah, for that, the first thing we need to know about, like, for me, that I would actually look into the segregation of duty. Is there division of duty, or is it just one person in charge of everything? Is there much power on someone?
Okay,
Yeah.
so you might want to first of all start by looking at the board effectiveness, right? So how effective is the
Yeah.
board? You find that even in a lot of organizations now, they report on attendance, the meetings. So how many times did the directors attend meetings, especially for subcommittees as well too? Who is heading what subcommittee? How many times did they attend those meetings? So how effective the board has been. Even like I said, directors' attendance is publicly accounted for in a couple of financials. So yes, that can speak to issues around that. Also too, with clear communication around policies. So what sort of policies, for the organizations, have been related? Are there policies for quite a lot of, so that there is also fairness in the way people are managed, or the way the resources and the way the organization is managed. So you would also want to see things around policies and documentations as well too. Is there anything again?
Does that actually imply to internal control? I mean, the policy
Yeah,
and the, what did you write there?
yeah. So for there will be, there has to be key documentation that guides the conduct, for staff conduct, for employee conduct, for organizational operational conduct. So adherence to those things is where you find the role of controls and the internal functions. Okay, is anybody happy to give us some more again? Or some people want to choose to be quiet today? Okay. Another one.
Jojo,
Yeah.
can we add transparency and fairness in the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody wanted to speak. I think that was Efe. Efe, please go on.
Okay, so it's not FA, but I wanted to check whether we can add the board composition and maybe the CPD, continuous professional development.
Yeah. That's true. And we did say that, yeah, CPD CPD, continuous professional development of the board. Still speaking to board effectiveness, right? How effective the board has been in carrying out their operations as well too. Somebody did also speak about segregation of duties, ensure you don't have overlapping duties as well too. Organizational structural effectiveness as well too, right? Yeah, even things around remuneration, right? These are even governance issues as well too. Fair compensation, fair working conditions as well too, right? That's also fine. Okay, cool. For me, I'm happy you know that. Now, another one I wanted to speak to, please, it can come out again in your exam. I'm very, very interested in that. The fact that you have a good understanding of this is integrated reporting. What is integrated reporting? This is a report that communicates to stakeholders how value is created in an organization from in the future terms and also in current terms. So how value is built has been created in the past, in the future, and in the present, right? If I asked somebody here to tell me, speak to the components, and I like to start by this so that if at all you don't know anything in your exam and you see a question on integrated reports, if you can think of what the components of an integrated report will look like, then perhaps you can just use that to generate some points in your exam. So what are the components of an integrated report? So I told you what an integrated report is, a report that communicates how value has been created in the business in the past, in the present, and the future. It just shows value creation over time. That's the word. The report that shows value creation over time, and the time zone is in the past, in the current, and in the future. So what are the components of an integrated report? I'm happy for you all to share with me. What are the components of an integrated report? I think about
Okay,
8 of
Jojo,
those.
I'll give two. We have financial, then manufactured.
No.
We have social.
Hi, Jojo.
All right.
So,
Hanging.
The component of integrated report entails the organization's overview.
Okay. Yeah.
And also, it also shows the external environment of the organization,
Good.
either
Yeah, good.
the PESTA or the Porter forces structure. And it
Again.
also shows the I would say our organization creates value, the future plans and strategies.
Okay. Hold on. You are mixing. Taiwo, calm down. Okay. Who wants to take it up from her? She's put them up together. There are about 8 of them. Please, you should know this now. Please.
Does he also talk about the SWOT analysis?
Business model.
So Taiwo, you hold on. Taiwo, I want you to hold on. Yeah. So Taiwo, just hold on. So business model. All right. Cool.
Risk
Governance.
and opportunity.
Risk and
Governance.
opportunity.
Governance.
Okay, go on.
Governance.
Okay. Is that the only one?
Strategy and strategy and
strategy.
resource allocation.
Brilliant. Strategy and resource allocation.
Performance.
Exactly. Performance. There's also future outlook.
Outlook, yes.
All right, good. Please, I beg of you. I am before you quote me, so I don't want you to quote me, but I'm very certain that integrated reporting sustainability might feature on your exam. Please just have a very strong hold of these things, right? So then under integrated reporting as well too is the view
Jojo,
on capital.
can I ask a question real quick, please?
Yeah, please do. Feel free.
So, does it mean that the 6 capital is not included in this?
That's why that's exactly what I was coming to speak on. The components of, you structure the reports along these lines, right? Now, but a very important thing, especially when we are now looking at performance, right, is the way we look at capital, the way we rethink capital. And then in our integrated reports, we say we've got integrated capitals, right? So 6 of them. And that's the 6. Let me just list them out. So there's that technical article I can share it with all of you if you want to see it, so that helps. Please, this is an area that in fact, integrated thinking has been tested also in the past. So your capitals, the 6 capital. So what are the 6 capital? I think this is where many of you now sort of mixed it up. So go on. Tell me.
So we have the financial capital, manufactured capital, and we also have the intellectual capital. And what else? We have the natural capital and the social capital. Stop to 6.
So I've seen some textbook call this relationship capital. So there's a 6th one.
Human capital. Human
Fantastic.
capital.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Honestly, I would love to explain what they all mean. But I believe you all know. And let me move away from here. The board of directors are very important. Diversity of the board is an important issue. If you check BCO, this was also tested. Public sector governance, another very slightly an under-tested area. I haven't seen a lot of it. But not just with public sector, but also with not-for-profit organizations like charities. I think we've had 2 past questions in the past. BCO and the one we will do on Tuesday, NCCP, the Not Seville Charity Project. Yeah, it's also governed in this manner as well. So you can use your value for money or use your 3 E's to somewhat look at how governance should be in place. Okay, let's go to the heart of this course, strategy. So under strategy, I'm going to just speak on a couple of them because I know you're fine, but I want you to think of these models and these topics and the models that are helpful. I did say that for environmental assessment, basically external, that's really what we are looking at here, the external environment. It usually has this dichotomy of the industry or the macro. And obviously, if it's industrial analysis, I've always said, be happy to always think about the Porter's 5 forces to help you do any analysis you want to do, right? But is that just that? What about the macro environment? You can do which one? What do you use for the macro environment?
Pestel.
Yeah, Pestel. But please, by no means are this the only model you can use. Let me also say that in SBL, no marks, please, just for the sake of those who are joining us, no marks are awarded. No marks are awarded for the use of a model. No marks are awarded for the use of a model. Please, it is the application. Models are applied, meaning that you use the models to generate your answers. So it also means, which is interesting, you can mix 1 or 2 models together. You can do that. But you don't get a mark for the model. You just use the model to generate your response. Another way to think of it is that I've seen a couple of questions. So if you're thinking of a fantastic way to analyze the macro environment, you could think of Pestel. But not all Pestel factors could be very handy in a question. So some questions you might not even find anything that speaks to legal issues, or that might speak to an ecological issue around the natural environment. So I want you to manage that, right? Competition and competitive force analysis is very important. How to gain competitive advantage. What are the strategies we use for competing against our competitors? So let me ask a very basic question, right? But just to also improve the knowledge we have here. What are the competitive strategies that you know? So basically, how can firms compete or against, how can firms be successful in competition? What are these common competitive strategies you know? So I'm happy to get a response.
Okay, so the,
Okay, who's speaking?
there is differentiation, there is low
Fantastic.
cost and focus, and then focus can either be cost focus or differentiation focus.
No. Ife, well done, but I think you mixed it up somewhere again. Start again. There's differentiation. That's one. I give that to you.
Low cost and
low cost. You said low cost. Okay.
And
Okay.
focus.
Okay. Please let me also say something. So this is Porter's competitive strategies. You also have the strategy clock. That is a further extension. I don't know how many of you can recall the strategy clock. About 8 strategies. Why you have some strategies? I think there are some strategies 6, 7, 8 that are called danger strategy. You know, with the Porter's, with the strategy clock, you basically then group the strategies along the line of value and cost. So you now have those strategies for offering low value, low cost. It's called no frills. I don't know how many of you can remember the strategy clock, right? But I'm not here to teach you models. But I'm saying that the strategy clock is an extension of these 3. So firms can compete. So sometimes one of the things I want you to do in a case study question, very importantly, is to always find out what competitive strategy. And I say this because your questions can speak to how you are turning around performance or how you're trying to improve the performance. Always do this for me, please. Find out what competitive, I've seen questions where it was stated. Find out what competitive strategy the organization is using in the scenario. Please find out what competitive strategy they are adopting. Right? And then I'm going to speak about evaluation of strategic choices. There are several choices for how an organization decides to achieve their strategy. It can be to grow organically. It can be to grow inorganically, right? And when you begin to look at inorganic strategies, so you can do what? Mergers and acquisitions. What else can you do? You can do strategic partnerships. What else can you do? You can do franchising. You can do licensing. You can do joint ventures, right? So please, that's important. But let me say something and I'll wrap up here and move to the next session. I find that there is no better model for evaluating strategic choices or anything strategy at all better than the SFA model. But I must still give you my caveat. And my caveat is that you are not going to be awarded marks for stating a particular model. Please. So let me, because I find that almost every SBL question, almost every SBL exam diet, you will find questions where you are trying to evaluate a strategy and people tend to use this model a lot, but it's the application that I'm now wanting to speak on. So I'm just going to tell you the things that will earn you marks if you try to use the SFA model. So suitability is commonly tested, feasibility, and acceptability. If I asked somebody in the class now to tell me what we are looking at for here, I hope I'm going to hear something. When we say suitability, it's about if the strategy that the organization wants to adopt or the strategic action or the strategic course that the organization wants to take, if it's in line, if it suits the current strategy of the organization. So suitable to the strategy of the organization. Now, the big picture is that you don't, it's not helpful if organizations make decisions that are not suitable with their core strategy. Because the big picture is that with your strategy, you want to be able to achieve your organizational objectives. So you want to make sure that every strategic action, every strategic course, every strategic path that the organization takes suits the overall strategy. Now, I want to trade back now to the class. What else again are we looking for under suitability? Who can try?
Hi, Jojo.
Yeah,
So,
John, go on.
can we also talk about the culture? So I know there was a question that I saw sometimes ago. I think
It is. You're correct.
so. Where in that company there is investment in staff development, but the company that they want to acquire, there is ceiling. So women cannot go beyond a certain level of grade. They can't have some trainings, something like that.
I agree with you. Cultural alignment is also an important thing. In fact, culture is so important that I think there's a famous quote that, culture takes or its strategy for breakfast, something like that. It just keep my mind the correct quote for that, right? So I agree with you. So also important too is cultural alignment as well too. I perfectly agree with you. Under feasibility, we're really looking at feasibility here. We speak to the potential for the course of action to become successful. So under feasibility, part of the things we are looking at for here under feasibility will be things like what, right? Feasibility, we are looking at for what? So first of all, do we have the resources? What again could we be looking at for under feasibility? Eloho, do you want to try? What again could we be looking at for? Do we have the experience in the course of action we're trying to take? Can anybody try again? Do we have the resources? Do we have the experience?
Okay, you actually talk about resources. I wanted to say that do we have the fund, like the required financial resources?
Can we fund it? Yeah, Tyrell, well done. Is there anybody who wants to add again? So also experience, expertise, technical skill sets.
I don't know. Can we also look at whether it can withstand competition in the industry or something like that?
Okay.
And also, do we have experience managing similar business?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Experience with a similar course of action, right? Faye, go on.
I said time.
Okay.
Are we able to? Is there time constraints? Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. So any impediment that we think might stand along the line, we want to ask ourselves whether those impediments have been properly taken care of. Under acceptability, so acceptability from the perspective of stakeholder acceptability. Yeah, go on.
I just want to quickly ask, does experience include information in terms of feasibility still? Like,
so
do
what
we
do you
have
mean by
adequate information
about what we need?
Yes. Do we have enough information to pursue the strategy?
Okay, yeah, it's under feasibility, but maybe not under experience, right? It's under feasibility as well too. Do we have full information about what we need to do? Yeah. Anything that would guarantee a successful strategy is what we are looking at for you under feasibility. So under acceptability is stakeholders acceptability, and obviously the very important one, the big one, is the financial payoff. That will speak to shareholders acceptability as well too. So the financial payoff, sometimes I always say your risk versus reward. Okay, I'm doing this because, and what do you call it?
The cultural differences. do we
it's fine.
not
Context
need to look into that? Like,
no, I'd already put cultural alignment under suitability.
Okay.
Okay, I had to explain this because I've seen a couple of responses from people where I felt, look, be very clear on how to apply this model so that you are not doing model fitting, right? Forcing a model to fit your response. If you understand this, then you can ask yourself important questions when you evaluate any strategy. All right.
Sorry, Jojo.
So
I have a question.
good.
Can we put,
Yeah.
like, I was thinking of organization structure. Can we put it in suitability? In a case where we have, like, we want to merger an acquisition, we want to buy another company, and can we bring it here?
So the merger and acquisition is the strategic action the organization wants to pursue. So, except your question is, we want to see whether our structure and their own structure, whether it aligns together, right? But the big consideration is really whether the strategy of that particular organization has a similar strategy that is aligned with what, or they have a particular competitive advantage that by the time we acquire them, we are able to pass it on to our business and it helps our business achieve our strategy. But what I would say is rather than tell you an outright no, if you are able to show the linkage with how that speaks to the particular action suiting the strategy of the organization, you get your marks. Is that fine?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so let's get to another big one, risk management in SBL. You might find questions asking you to identify risk, and I think it's simple. You know, I always like the concept of using a table to present risk because most questions in risk could be both risk and the mitigants to the risk. So if you want to do that, that's fine. You might be asked to assess the risk, which is really to explain what the impact of the risk can be and try and analyze the impact of the risk should they crystallize, right? Because risk refers to situations where there could be variability in outcomes. So you might want to assess what the possible outcomes could be. There are a lot of mechanisms we can use to measure risk, right? Or what I say, account for a risk. I don't think you get to that level in SBA where they start asking you to look at things around expected values, probabilities. I mean, you use probabilities in arriving at expected values. Maybe things like looking at the standard deviation. You can use that to measure the risk as well too. When something looking at the deviation from the mean, from an average, you know, and what the potential outcomes might be, right? So you can find all that kind of metrics, but that's how we do measurement of risk, and quite a lot of sophisticated tools we can use for measuring risk, ANOVA, analysis of variance as well. But more important is how to mitigate risk. Mitigants to risk could be very, very important. So I usually say that it is important you know that in your exam, once you identify a risk, you must be capable of identifying the right mitigant to the risk. And sometimes it's easy because if you know this is wrong, then how do you correct what is wrong about it? You might also be told to prepare a risk map. We looked at a question like that in one of our lectures. That thing around presenting a risk using that map, probability impact map or matrix. So maybe one line here can be for probability, likelihood of occurrence, and then impact or severity. So depending, so let's say I say low high for probability, let's say for impact, then here low high. So you might find a risk, let's call this risk liquidity risk. The probability of it occurring might be low, but should it happen, the risk that we might not have enough liquidity to meet day-to-day obligations. But if it happens, it might be high. So you plot it on the risk map. If I was you might be asked to do something like this in your exam, right? Probability of it happening might be low, so it will be on this extreme, but it is high. So you might just come here and write liquidity risk. All right. So you might find something like strategic risk. Maybe there's a risk that the strategy of the organization might no more be effective again to meet evolving times. And the probability that that looks, maybe there's a major action that the organization has taken looks very high, and the impact obviously will be high. So you can now come here and put it here, strategic risk. So I just wanted to tell you that in your exam, you might find questions on risk that might say, present it on a risk map. I hope this is clear on presenting a risk on a risk map. Is that something we all can do? The guys are quiet. Dakpo, is that something we can do? Or Loye de Dakpo? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, that's fine. Enterprise risk management is a very holistic approach to risk. And the idea really is that, so two main trusts for enterprise risk management. Risk should not be limited to a particular aspect of the organization. Everyone is involved, right? And obviously, there's a whole enterprise risk management framework that speaks to how the organization sets the tone at the top, creates the right environment, identifies risk, has a risk register, can report on those risks, does his assessment to do prioritization, has a lot of internal controls to also ensure that these risks don't crystallize, do your periodic risk monitoring, put in place mitigants, and just generally ensure that risk management is a continuous loop, right? So you might find those questions, but I want you to pay attention to cyber risk, technology risk. As a sort of risk, I want to be sure you have a very good understanding of what can create a cyber risk. And cyber risk largely will be around the risk that there might be cyber attacks to your organization, especially with organizations operating on the cyberspace. So if you have a website or if you have a couple of social media, cyber presence, basically. It could also be that you don't have a website, but you have a portal or a marketplace on many of these organizations' websites. And then, if anything happens on those sites. So the risk that there might be an attack on your organization on the cyberspace is a very common kind of risk we see. I want to do something to all of you now, and I just want to get your thoughts. What would you, or give me possible mitigants to cyber risk? Give me possible mitigants to cyber risk. Also, the risk that your organizational information, maybe you use some e-commerce sites, can be stolen on those e-commerce sites, and then they can hack into your organization and trail your organization, intercept an email from your organization. So there are a couple of cyber risk. But I want you generating let's start eliciting various ways we can mitigate cyber risk. It would just be nice to hear. So who is trying? Let me hear from Saeed. I want to hear from you, Saeed. Just try. Okay, who's going to try? Saeed doesn't want to speak. Who's going to try?
Hello, Jojo.
All right, fantastic. Go on.
So you can put up structures like having firewalls to protect your IT systems. Then you can also do education and training for staff. Maybe like have a cyber attack week where you sensitize them on the consequence of going to some sites while using the organization system.
Okay. Who else again?
Hi, Jojo. So we can also do removable media control.
Yeah. Removable media control. I like that.
And
a lot of
also,
organizations have disabled removable media on their systems. Okay, go on.
Also, we can do two-step authentication.
Okay. Why isn't someone thinking about security certificates, right? So you can secure your website. There's some sites that allow you to use trusted certificates. I mean, you can do all that. And basically too, as well, too, you can also prevent restrict quite a lot of activities on your site as well too. Some people might not want to have on their sites abilities to exchange financial information. If there's going to be any financial information, they are going to work or partner with a firm that has a higher level of security to let that happen as well too. So there are different levels of cybersecurity metrics you can adopt. I know because there's an article on that. That's why I'm sharing that you should be able to know this. Another area I'm tipping can come out in your exam. So let's build on that and move into core aspects of technology. For me, I want to zero in on big data analytics here. It comes out a lot. And you know, when I was taking you guys on technology, I did say SBL questions in technology will speak to the benefits, the risk associated with those technologies, and how they help align with strategy. So I want to ask somebody in the class, how can an organization leverage data analytics? Just give me different possible options on how organizations can leverage data analytics. I'm happy to hear from someone. Dami, do you want to try? Dami Lola, do you want to try? Okay, I think we are not ready for this.
Okay,
so we
Jojo.
can move on.
Hi, Jojo.
Yeah, fantastic one. Yeah.
Okay, so leveraging data analytics in your strategy could mean using your customers, the information you retrieve from your customers to actually discern and design services or products that meet particular target audience in your customer, I would say, database.
Yeah. You can use the huge amount of data when you've done your analysis on the data that can give you insights. So, for example, a couple of organizations have used. I think have I given you this example? I watched a documentary on how Amazon tracks the consumption rates on their antenatal products, right? And track that. So products for their pregnancy care products, and how they do that to plan for products for new babies. So when they find a huge amount of consumption on those products, in a couple of months' time, they start increasing their stock on new baby products. They can see that relationship, over time, and say, okay, we have a lot of women, purchasing products for pregnancy care. So maybe in a couple of months' time, we expect the babies are due, and then they start ordering products for new kids, right? So you can see how that works. Also, I've also seen an organization that have used data analytics to refine their campaign. So their data tells them that, look, a lot of our markets, from students, right? So maybe we do a campaign targeted at youth, at millennials, use influencers that they can relate with, to be able to sell my marketing message as well, right? So there are a couple of all that. In fact, new products have been bettered, even based on your analysis of the data, products that specifically will serve that target market. So you can do all that, right? So nice one from all of you. E-business has come out a lot actually too. With e-business, three popular topics have been tested in the past, and anyone can be repeated. E-procurement, I've seen e-procurement questions a lot. There's e-marketing, and there is customer relationship management systems. I've seen that, CRMS. Then there's also a question. I think that was smartware. You guys did smartware once. Yeah, we have here, I'm sure. There's also customer data
Yes, we
base
did.
management. Yeah, customer database management systems. All right. So you can essentially think of some of these topics, very important. I like the 6 eyes. There's a model we call the 6 eyes. I don't know how many of you can recall that model. Meaning, what are the characteristics of operating on the internet, right? That you don't find with a traditional business approach. So what are they somewhat speak to the benefits of an e-business offering as opposed to a brick and mortar or an offline business offering. So there are 6 eyes. Who can remember them? There's one on interactivity, that if you operate on the internet, you can essentially drive interaction at a level we've never seen before, because you can initiate two-way communication with your clients, and there can be a chat bot responding to people. You basically, so emails can even allow for exchange of information as well. So it improves interactivity, and interactivity isn't limited to a particular time zone, so it can be 24/7. People have contact centers linked to their web presence, and they can serve you at any point in time. Who wants to give me another characteristics? I mean, another features or benefits of
Intelligence.
brilliant.
Intelligence.
I like that. Intelligent. So explain to me. Don't just say it to me, because it's an applied exam,
So,
right?
so
So what
for
do you
the
mean by intelligence?
intelligence, so you use data that you have gathered
Good.
on a particular customer to determine, okay, this is what this customer is likely to be requesting for. So you use that one to build intelligence about what the customer will want in the future.
Yeah. And that is why sometimes some of those intelligence, you see AI, artificial intelligence at work sometimes, is when they find that a particular, so I've seen this work sometimes on some sites, right? There are some algorithms. When they find that you visit a particular site on their particular web page on their site, they are able to, using an algorithm, show the linkage with previous people who have visited such pages, and then essentially can then link you now to saying people who view this page also viewed a couple of pages. They're able to use that to come up with intelligence to then link you to, or predict what next you might want to do on the site. So that's predictive analytics, at play as well too. Because of time, let's move on. Internal control and internal audit is a perfect place and a perfect question I love to see in an SBL exam. I want to believe that you are all comfortable with how to spot out internal control deficiencies, how to spot out control lapses, control weaknesses, and more importantly, how to recommend an improvement to a control weakness. When we did COFOD construction, we saw the issues ranging from the poor lighting at the construction site, ranging to the fact that I think the health and safety manager was off work and there was no replacement. The number of security people couldn't properly man the place. So you can basically highlight a lot of internal control deficiencies. I'm too sure. It's a bit also challenging. Okay, so that means we're all good. Finance is also an area where I'm sure you're all good, right? I think I spent some time. Yeah.
I think we stopped
Please go ahead.
hearing you. We stopped hearing you. We didn't really get.
No, I was asking for you to tell me, are you comfortable with all these areas? Is there an area where you think you're not too comfortable? That was what I was asking.
Oh, okay. Can you please spell out the meaning of the RORCS and CRICM?
So those are objectives of an internal control system. But why do I think I should be the one? Now, you guys should be able to tell me what the objectives of an internal control systems are. You've done it. So risk management is one. Safeguarding of assets is another one. Ensuring compliance is another one. Do you want to try? But don't worry in terms of these things, right? It is the application that matters. You will not get a theoretic question in your exam.
Okay, but can you just help with the full meaning of those things? Thank you.
I'm going to share them with you. I don't want to answer them. I'm going to share them with you. I've given 3 and nobody is responding.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Because I'm getting the feedback. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So I think I've spoken on finance. Let me skip because I want us to wrap up now. We might even take a break and come back and
No, you haven't. You haven't.
I haven't done what?
We are about to actually speak
finance.
on this finance here.
Okay.
You haven't.
Okay. So finance objectives helps with realizing our business strategies. In fact, the simple way to look at it is that most of our business strategies will have its expression in financial form as well too. So take for instance a business that has an ambition to be the largest provider of a particular product or service in a particular location. If we express that financially, that will be speaking to market share, right? So the point is, from every business strategy, you can create a financial objective aligned to that overall business strategy. And that is why finance is central for us in SBL, because we know that for most strategic objectives, there are financial objectives aligned to them. Whether it's along the lines of revenue generation, along the lines of profitability, along the lines of cost reduction, there are financial implications of business strategies for every organization. Another thing in finance is to understand the function of the finance role in a business. So what does the finance team do? What does a finance team do in every business, right? So what are their roles, right? So the finance team is responsible for quite a lot of things, whether at strategic levels, also at operational levels. So things like budgeting, cost management, budget planning, all these are functions of the finance team. Managing the cost of funds of the business is also a finance function. Treasury is a finance function. In fact, functions like reporting, ensuring compliance with regulatory authorities, and tax management, tax planning, all these are finance functions. Raising finance, raising capital, asset liquidity and liability management, all these are finance functions. Managing the receivables, managing the payables of an organization, all these are finance functions, right? So it's important that we understand what the finance functions are, but what the reality is that some finance functions are increasingly being managed at several levels now. So you can have some finance functions that can be outsourced. Very, very common to see. Some people outsource receivable management. And there are receivables collections organizations that can help you with all that. Some people can even manage their finance function on a shared basis arrangement. What do I mean by on a shared basis arrangement? So FX, foreign currency assets, foreign currency liabilities can be managed in a lot of organizations on a shared basis. Meaning, so if you have an organization that has subsidiaries and quite a couple of smaller entities, it might make sense that they can aggregate all their FX assets, aggregate all their FX liabilities, maybe do a matching, a netting of, and then manage the risk along the lines of the differentials. So I've seen that happen as well too. Some people can also use a shared approach to raising funds. So if you wanted to raise fund, I've seen where you do come together and then raise funds as a block, as a collective, as a corporation. I've seen people raise funds, especially for small businesses. You can come together, form a small coalition as a small union, market union, and access some kind of funding, especially for some of these government interventions. I've seen small businesses come together, form a coalition, and then they register themselves and then regulate themselves and then use that to access as cooperatives and access some kind of funding as well too. Financial analysis, very important to understand the various types of financial analysis you can do. You can do your simple profitability analysis, risk analysis, your gearing analysis, your liquidity analysis, right? Investor related analysis. Sources of finance, think of ICOs as a new addition, but obviously don't forget the traditional ones. There's debt, there's equity as well too. Small businesses can leverage off things like grants, right? Government grants or individual or corporate organization giving grants. Investment appraisal, there are several mechanisms we can use for investment appraisal, several methods. You can do your MPV, you can do your ROI, your return on investment. Some textbooks have called ROI accounting rate of return. So just in case you see that, if you read somewhere, you can also do modified internal rate of return. Yeah, but I've not seen a question on this as well. So you can use all these mechanisms. So you do your simple internal rate of return. Decision trees are in the syllabus, which is presenting diagrammatically the various parts. So you use decision tree when an organization wants to make a decision, and those decisions can have financial impact, whether cost implications or revenue implications. You can plot them out, right, and use a decision tree to solve it. So you can do something like that. Okay, so let's say the decision is to expand. Let's say it's a UK company and you want to expand to America, right? So you can say that you can decide to acquire X company, and the probability of that happening might be 70%, and the acquisition will come at a cost of maybe 50 million. And you can decide to say you would acquire another company Y. The probability of that happening is 30%, but that will come at a rate of about 100 million. If you acquire X, what are the benefits? And you just begin to build your decision trees like that. And then you work back, revenues to cost, and ultimately you get your final output. I've not seen it since SBL became an exam, but I know that decision trees do exist. What again? Financial performance analysis. This is ratio analysis. You can do ratios along the lines of what I said here. Decision-making techniques as well too. So there are short-term decision-making techniques and long-term decision-making techniques. Short-term decision-making technique is where you do marginal costing, marginal analysis, right? The impact of one extra product, what would that mean? So I told you to check Dochico to see an example of this. Why for long-term decision-making, you can do MPV, IRR, and the likes, because they are multi-period. They have multi-period cash flows involved. If you are doing an MPV, you look at cash flows over a couple of years. So marginal costing, product costing, those are short-term decisions. But long-term decisions will be around decisions to invest in a company. You know, those kind of decisions, the techniques you use will be all these techniques I put under investment appraisal because they have long-term cash flow recognition in their models. Cost and management technique, budgeting can come out. Please, budgeting can come out. In specimen 3, budgeting was tested. Standard costing variance analysis as well too, still part of it as well too, variance analysis, it can be tested. Marginal costing techniques, relevant costing, I spoke about this. Please look out for this question in Dochico. Look out for it in Dochico. Should you buy, should you lease? It was tested in Dochico. Okay, then do we have another part? Yeah, so this is the final part, then we'll take a break after this. Under this area, I've spoken about project management, the life cycle of a project. So know your project life cycle. It can be tested in your exam. What is the life cycle, or what do you mean by the project life cycle? What are the life cycle stages in a project? Who wants to tell me? Let me see. I have a second device. I can tell who is on the call. Let me hear from Comfort. Ogbonna Comfort. Do you want to tell me the various stages in a life cycle of a project?
Hi, Jojo.
Yeah, hello.
I don't have it all in my head right now.
Just try.
I know I know there's a starting phase.
Let me help you. So you just don't spoil it. So there's project initiation, there's project planning. Who wants to continue?
Project initiation, planning,
Project execution,
monitoring,
controlling
and closing.
Good. Please, is an examiner's favorite to Abeg. Please. Yeah. Project completion. A couple of things are important. Know your PID, your project initiation documents. Also know your business case document. Know your project plan. It has been tested too recently. Organizing success is just looking at types of organizational structures. You covered this in someone is let me Tunde, Baba Tunde.
Yes, sir.
I muted you. Organizing for success, understanding the various types of organizational structure. This was one session where we had the guests come and speak to us, right? So several structures, functional structure, divisional structure, transnational structure, just knowing when a structure is important and when a structure needs to change. Disruptive technologies, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine. I mean, we covered all that. HR, the role of HR in every organization, how you recruit. HR is strategic to success in an organization. Your manpower planning, your recruitment planning, also to how you're also remunerating as well is very important. Your remuneration is in key. Also too will be aspects around succession planning, identifying your key talents, retaining the key talents, because it's important that you're able to attract the best and the brightest, you're able to retain the best and the brightest, and you're also able to make sure that there's a career path for the best and the brightest, because ultimately it's people who run the organizations. Performance excellence, understanding what is it that makes certain organizations so successful. And this is the point I will anchor, and I'm going to ask someone to tell me, using the Badridge assessment criteria, tell me a bit about what you find common in successful organizations. So I'm just trying to say, use the Badridge assessment performance criteria to tell me the key attributes of successful organizations. So tell me the elements of the Badridge performance model. That way, you are thinking of what successful organizations, highly successful firms have in common. So let's go. There are about, how many of it? 7. Yeah, let's go. Who can try? And then we go on a break after this. I've got Dayo Ladiri. Do you want to try?
Hello, I don't have all my head.
Yes, so just the ones you have.
Leadership, governance.
No. So okay. Let me allow you continue. Can someone help her? Can someone help?
Okay, we have customer. Hello.
Who's speaking? Yeah, go on.
Okay, so
the lady that said hello, go on.
Okay, so we have customer, we have strategy, leadership, which is what he has mentioned. Then we have, of course, the workforce as well. Then our operations. I know there's results as well, but there's one other one that I can't remember now.
You tried.
That's measurement, analysis, and knowledge management.
Yes, that's it. You're right. Thank you.
Okay, what other 2 do we have as well?
Jojo, that's 7.
That's not 7 now. We only have how many here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 2 more.
Let me
results. You didn't put
workforce.
results.
Yeah.
Workforce.
Yeah.
Yes, workforce.
So the idea is nobody's going to give you marks for staying this, but I'm forcing you to think of it so that when you see what to focus on to make a team, you might be set a question where you are to make a team a high-performing team. Remember this model, right? So that you know how to apply it. Okay. I'm going to end the session by saying that always make sure I've gone through a review of the syllabus with you. Always make sure that every point you make has to be from something related to the scenario. Always make sure that you are applied in your responses, that your responses are applied, meaning that your responses relate to the organization. You're not going to get marks for the model. You're not going to get marks for stating a framework. It is how you use those models to generate points that is the key. Right? So we're going to go on a break now for 15 minutes. When we come back, I'm going to review the professional skills with you using a question to do that and just tell you a couple of things that would be nice, right? So we'll just look at a question. We'll look at the December 2021 question, and then we'll use that to then build the professional skills. And I think I'm going to check with my guest if she's still going to be around, and then we'll wrap up. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. So let's see in 15 minutes time. That should be 11:55. Take care.